On the topic of Trump taking power, former CBSA officer, we've got the video, slams the Trudeau Liberals for a lack of staff to patrol the border, warning that Canada is about to experience a tsunami of illegal migrants fleeing the United States. Our government is absolutely not prepared, he says.
This is going to be unprecedented pressure on Canada. It's going to be unprecedented.
Well, let me pick up on that aspect of it, because Mark Miller said that there's an alignment here in interests, making sure that our shared border is safe and secure. Is that the reality, that there's shared interest and there's an alignment?
No, it's definitely not No, there's no reality there. What we've been hearing from our government, especially recently, but what we've been listening to for the last decade, frankly, is quite misleading. We don't have a border patrol. We don't have the number of officers needed to adequately enforce our customs and our immigration laws at the borders, let alone in our communities. We're about to experience a tsunami of people who are living illegally in the United States seeking asylum in Canada. And we do not have the capacity, and it's going to bring organized crime with it too.
That's good.
So you think Donald Trump will go through with these mass?
That's good, Efron. Yeah. Seems about right. I mean, we saw in 2017 that Justin Trudeau, in an attempt to sort of be the compassionate leader of the global anti-Trump cabal, tweeted to everybody fleeing persecution, welcome to Canada, and then they took him seriously. Although they weren't fleeing persecution, they were mostly economic migrants. And they just collapsed our immigration system, and we still haven't recovered.
But Sheila, to look at it through Trump's lens, this is a good thing. If he can offload
he doesn't care.
Dependents, criminals, gangsters, sex traffickers into our dominion,
that's not his problem.
Yeah, that's our problem. That's his victory. So I think if Justin Trudeau wants to get on Donald Trump's good side again, put that tweet out again. # welcome to Canada.
Yeah, what a nightmare. Now, Mark Miller, who continues to look like a vampire's familiar, suggests that Canada's border with the U.S. was secure during the COVID pandemic, despite simultaneously a record-breaking influx of migrants crossing at Roxham Road during that time. And we know that Canadians crossing the border had to quarantine, and these guys were just like, hey, can I show you to your new digs at the COVID or at the immigration hotel down the road? But Canadians, if they didn't have a ArriveCan and a quarantine plan, they got a $5,600 fine. But illegal migrants, off to the new apartment complex. So let's listen to Mark Miller. See, he does look like a vampire's familiar. He looks sickly.
Just that some of what Donald Trump has said on migrants might be hyperbole. What makes you believe that?
Look, I think that anytime we have looked at any election cycle to the South, it doesn't take much to come to that conclusion. I think we have to take the statements seriously at the same time and prepare for it. And I think if we've demonstrated anything to anyone as a country, particularly with the prior administration under President Trump, is that we are able to work together in very difficult circumstances, including in securing the northern border to the U.S., southern to us, in the context of something equally difficult, which is a global pandemic. So I'll say this again because it's true, but it is in the national interest of both countries to make sure that we have managed flows of migration and flow of goods across that border. And it's something that we have to continuously strive to make and get right.
Sheila, I respectfully disagree with you, my dear. I don't think Mark Miller resembles a vampire. It was going
a vampire's familiar.
Yeah,
he's not good enough to be turned. He's just like an errand boy for a vampire.
But it was going through my brain. There is something reminiscent. And then I had an epiphany. He looks like Ralph Melf from Happy Days. Maybe Mr. Producer Efren can get an image of Ralph Melf up there. I think they're separated at birth. And of course, Ralph Melf was probably the most pathetic character on Happy Days. Did you ever watch Happy Days, Sheila, by any chance?
Yeah,
okay.
I did.
You know what I'm talking about. You look mystified.
I I think it just occurred to me that he looks slightly like King Tut's mummy. Like not King Tut, but King Tut's mummy. That's what he looks like a little bit to me. Just his sunken cheekbones and beakish nose. But he is right.
There.
Yeah, he does look like Ralph Malph a little bit. Yeah, okay, I get it. But like Ralph Malph, who's recovering from mono, maybe. But he is right. They can close the border, and they always could if they wanted to. They just never want to when it comes to illegal migration. They could deal with people trying to go on holidays, people trying to visit their families. Oh, no back and forth across the border for you. So they can do it. They just never do when it comes to illegal migration. Anyway, let's go to the next video.
Okay.
Because now we're tight for time. Mark Miller suddenly figuring out the laws of supply and demand far too late. He says that it's clear the age of unlimited supply of cheap foreign labor is over. We've been asking for that for a very long time as you continue to drive down the wages of Canadians. He's just figuring it out now because he's probably going to lose his seat.
For the longest time, the temporary foreign worker program has been a source of cheaper labor for many employers. That businesses are warning on the consequences of Ottawa's tougher policies to hire a TFW. Now, Minister, if both the temporary foreign workers and employers are not happy, why does Canada still keep the temporary foreign worker program?
You're talking about a low-wage stream that is only a very small portion of temporary residents in Canada. And maybe it is the case that employers need to pay their employees more, and we need to address what is in this area sometimes a very disproportionate relationship between employers and employees. I'm not going to say that every employer mistreats their employee. Far from that. I think if there's any indication from the screenings that we do is that the vast majority of employers are responsible, but there are challenges in the system. There are exploitative relationships that exist, and we need to crack down on them. That includes a proper wage. Clearly, in some of the low wage categories, whether it's people working in farms, whether it's people working in food processing, we've seen an exponential rise in those categories in the last few years, and those need to be addressed, I think, in the proper fashion, reducing the volume, but also making sure that we are not cutting off an area of industry in agriculture that in this era of food inflation is very important to the food sovereignty of Canada. So the answers aren't simple. It starts with making sure that everyone is treated with dignity as they work in Canada, regardless of whether they are temporary or a Canadian citizen. But it goes through making sure that the federal government is cracking down on bad behavior, making sure that employees in some circumstances may have more open permits than perhaps the conditions that they face currently, whether it's regional permits or sectoral permits. It's something we're looking at as we continue to reform the system. It's clear that the age of unlimited supply of cheap foreign labor is over, and I think that is a good thing, but it isn't.
Sheila, does Mark Miller, does he have any new data on the cricket file? How's that sector of the food processing industry coming along for us? Right?
You know, this guy, 6 months ago, if you said, hey, we have too many temporary foreign workers, he would be the first guy lining up to point the racist finger in your face. But now he's discovered the laws of supply and demand and seen the way the winds of the next election are blowing, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, too many people taking too many jobs. You know, the market will pay what the market can bear. And when you have too much supply, then it drives down the cost of wages. Who controls the supply? Mark Miller. And if businesses are looking for lower wage employees, there's often a reason for that. And it is not the way that Mark Miller instantly assumes that everybody is just some exploitative capitalist. You're taxing these people to death. They've got to save money somewhere. When you're piling on carbon taxes on top of farmers, and then you're piling on income tax, and then now we have to worry about capital gains taxes, guess where they're going to try to save money? On labor costs. And so they're going to hire the lowest cost wage because there's nowhere else that they can save money from. So there are two ways that the government can fix this. Crack down on the temporary foreign work permits and cut the taxes. And guess what? You're going to see wages go up.
Unbelievable. And why don't we go to our perhaps least favorite cabinet minister of all time? That would be Fraulein
including
Freeland.
Within Trump's cabinet. Boy, they sure don't like her.
Fraulein Freeland is trying to reassure Canadians that the Liberal government has, quote, control over the Canada-U.S. border, end quote. Okay. Does that kind of come across as like the captain of the Titanic saying, oh, pay no attention to that lump of ice we just sideswiped. Everything's okay.
Oh, God. She just looks like Christmas. You shouldn't wear red and green together. There she is. It's quite something because the Americans are busting terrorists coming in from Canada all the time, and then she has the audacity to say these things. But let's listen to her lie, and then we can all understand together why we quite likely won't see a renegotiated Canadian-American free trade agreement without Mexico until she is no longer near the levers of power.
On the border, we're hearing concerns from the incoming U.S. border czar in terms of him describing it as an extreme national security vulnerability. What's your government's plan to respond to those concerns, and do they involve more law enforcement at the border?
We take the border very, very seriously, and that's why the border was the first issue that we discussed at this meeting of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee. Minister LeBlanc spoke at length. Minister Miller spoke at length. The head of the RCMP was present as well and talked about actions he is taking, as was the head of the CBSA. So we take the border very, very seriously. It is important, first and foremost, for the security of Canada and Canadians, for our border to be secure, to be controlled. And I think it's absolutely legitimate for our American neighbors to want to work collaboratively and effectively with us and to want to know that we take border security seriously, which we do.
Are there plans to staff up law enforcement?
Okay, that's good. Like, what did she actually say there? She said that she takes the border very, very seriously, 3 or 4 separate times. What does that mean? I think it's important that we all know that we take the border very, very seriously. We've heard from Minister LeBlanc. We've heard from the CBSA. And they know that it is important to work collaboratively with our American neighbors to take the border very, very seriously. What did she say? She spoke for 2 minutes, didn't say anything.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism.